So, welcome here to this panel seminar. My name is Lotta Norberg. I'm with the Swedish Red Cross, and this is the panel of what we can learn from humanitarian work in Ukraine. And welcome to you who have braved the winds here in Visby, and also to you who are joining online. And welcome to our distinguished panel, bringing different perspectives on crisis preparedness from the civil society, armed forces, and the business sector. And in case of, the emergency exit is the same as where you entered. And speaking of emergencies, the Red Cross movement all over the world is meeting the consequences of a changing climate every day in the shape of heat waves, droughts, and floods affecting people. And today we publish an open letter to all party leaders in Sweden, asking them to bring up solutions to the climate crisis in their speeches here in ALMEDALEN. And the Swedish Red Cross has started a petition asking all political leaders to do more, which 30,000 people have signed. And if you want to contribute to sustainability here in ALMEDALEN, you're welcome to Fashion Loop in Hästskotsbacken, where you can borrow clothes from Red Cross second-hand shops and also other actors. I borrowed this dress, for example, there. And I know sustainability is something that many of you are taking very seriously. And this is also a part of crisis preparedness. But today we will focus more broadly on crisis preparedness as a part of the total defense. So, we will start with our first guest from the Ukrainian Red Cross. Warm welcome to you. And please introduce yourself and also give us your perspective, your learnings. What have you done since February 2022, and how have you adapted to the dramatically growing humanitarian needs in Ukraine?
Yep, thank you. So my name is Serhiy, and I'm Director of Programs for Ukrainian Red Cross, based in Ukraine for more than 10 years, working in armed conflict. So what happened for the last years, for me, is a path from initial shock to resilience, and we managed to build the system which is able to cope to big extent with what's happening. Because I remember the first days of invasion, where everything was like a post-apocalypse. You've seen people fleeing, all roads blocked by vehicles, train stations overcrowded, people desperate for help, people desperate for information. And now, if you go to Kiev, you will see that we have coffee shops, we have everything functioning, communal services, police. You will see armed forces holding in defense. And for me, that's a big step. And I'm sure that Red Cross contributed to this resilience and ability to cope. Because we extended the number of staff in 10 times. And that's big, because initially we had like 50 people in Kiev level, and it was not enough. Because we had millions of people in need, we had a lot of support available from other countries, including Sweden. But the idea was to facilitate assistance to get to people. So what we did, we built our staffing system. We built our regional network, because it is essential that whatever we think in capital should be implemented at local level. Whenever you have a region which is 500 kilometers away, people should be aware about the whole scope. They should be available to share all needs and get help. And jointly with other CFSOs, with local administration, with central government, and with armed forces, we managed to build this network where multiple NGOs, multiple municipalities work together to ensure that the country can recover. And as an example, whenever you see airstrike somewhere in Kiev, again, you can witness that the whole system is extremely fast and effective. You will see people coming around, doing search and rescue, securing the perimeter, providing psychosocial support, and the Red Cross is involved, and I'm sure that we have our role, and we will have it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ulrika Moder, you are Secretary General of the Swedish Red Cross. What are your thoughts when you listen to Serhiy? What what parallels can we draw to Sweden, and what are your thoughts? What the Swedish Red Cross can learn in a crisis preparedness?
Yeah. So first of all, for those who don't know, we're part of an international movement present in 191 countries, and we used to say that we're there before, during, and after crisis. Many times, of course, on television, including when you watch brave colleagues from the Ukrainian Red Cross, you would see that you're really working in the front line, also with the 10,000 volunteers that you've mobilized. But we also really work, as you said, to see to that we can also be part of building a society that can be much more resilient also, not least because we also know that many of the crises and conflicts that we see in the world and also in Ukraine are protracted. So making society work and doing our part to make society work in a protracted crisis or conflict situation is really what we need, I think, to learn how to do. And I think this is incredibly important because, as you said, when the invasion happened, the conflict started, the Ukrainian Red Cross was not that strong, to be honest, but strong enough. And this is also how we have been judged in the Swedish Red Cross when we look at the refugee crisis back in 2015, the pandemic in 2020, that we are strong enough with our presence across the country to really also be able to mobilize volunteers and to then also work. Because while we are a civil society organization and movement, we are also partnered to the governments. And I think there is also one of the main lessons learned also from Ukraine, but also other contexts, how we can find our added value also within the national situation and really know how to do what we do best in relation to public also authorities, but also other civil society actors.
Nina, you will get to present yourself too. And we've been cooperating with ICA for many years now, and so please give your thoughts on how ICA is contributing and could develop contributing even more to crisis preparedness.
Right, so we sell food, medicine, we also have banking and insurance services. So early on we donated 15 million to Red Cross to directly give that to Ukraine, and we continue donating through the Pantknappen, which is the bottle deposit. But we also collaborate with Red Cross locally, and I think that is what you talked most about, Sergei, which we really need to do here in Sweden. So we have 1,300 stores out there with the shop owners that are very active in the local society, collaborating with Red Cross locally, but also with different municipalities and different organizations, so that we can kind of like start preparing for or kind of like crisis that if that could happen. And there I think the most important thing is to have this collaboration going on so that we are a little bit more prepared, and we also have learned a lot what you have done in Ukraine. And then finally we have established a fast track for Ukrainian products, because we already sell some Ukrainian products in our stores, and we could sell more. So we have established a fast track so that you don't need to go through all the formalia that we normally have, which takes a couple of months in the logistics and so on. So we hope that we can get more products out of Ukraine on the Swedish shelves as well.
Thank you. I will go through the panel like this, just to give you a chance to introduce yourself. So welcome, Tora from Volvo. Please introduce yourself and please describe a little bit of our collaboration, Red Cross and Volvo, in Ukraine.
Well, thank you for inviting me and the Volvo Group. I'm Tora Leifland. I'm representing Volvo Construction Equipment. We are part of the Volvo Group, producing trucks, buses, and wheel loaders, excavators, not cars. That's a different company. And we have a strategic partnership with the Red Cross. So that means you are our partner for humanitarian aid, typically in situations of natural disaster. In the case of Ukraine, we have scaled up that collaboration and also worked on logistics solutions. So we've been supporting with buying transport capacity and finding carriers for your humanitarian supplies to reach Ukraine. We've also donated a few trucks, very practical, example of how we can contribute. I mean, if you may, I mean, what we can, these are examples of what we can do in another country, but of course what we can do as Volvo Group in Sweden is different, because this is our home country where we have most of our operations, factories and people. So here we have quite a clear view on how we can contribute to the total defense of Sweden. Sweden being robust and resilient and democratic is the basis for our competitiveness. So I think there is a lot of scope for closer collaboration with all the parties here on the panel and others as well, of course. And we do not aspire to become a non-profit, obviously. We are a private company, but we can leverage different capabilities, I think, in our different areas.
Thank you. So our final panel member, please introduce yourself also. And I know you have visited Ukraine, and maybe you have some learnings from your operation, what you can bring home from that.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Laura. I'm the commander of the Swedish Home Guard, and I have to start with some historical background. We were established 1940 during the Second World War, and our soldiers, the strength is that we are locally recruited and have the local knowledge, and that is something we have learned from Ukraine as well, that it's very important that we have this local connection. And Sweden is divided into 4 military regions, and everything we do regionally, and to work together with the hospitals, with the Red Cross, with all kind of companies, and that is the strength. What we have done recently, last few years, is that we train civilian Ukrainians in what we call Operation Interflex, and we do that in the UK. And we have also trained Ukrainians in bigger units, both in Sweden but also in Ukraine. And what we have done recently, if we're connected to the Red Cross, is that we learn a lot of it goes both ways. We have had your medical personnel here in Sweden, and our has been into Ukraine as well. And the thing we have to do is to adapt quickly, because there are technical solutions and things actually develops very quickly. So those are the things that we have learned from you in Ukraine. Short version.
Yes, thank you. And technical solutions is something that I know that you worked a lot on.
Yes.
So could you please comment on that? How do you manage to keep a humanitarian operation going? And what is needed at the local level? Like, I know you mentioned, for example, cell phone connectivity, something crucial. How do you manage that? Compared to, for example, TV towers getting attacked.
Yes. Yep. So actually what happened in Ukraine, which was not obvious, is that at the very beginning, officially, the main source of communication was TV and radio. The problem here is that we quickly realized that if you have a TV tower, it's going to collapse at the very beginning of escalation. And that's why, luckily, Ukrainians were flexible enough to find a new way to communicate. Because usually mass communication should be easily accessible and resilient. And for Ukraine, our experience is that the most stable way of communication is basically a cell phone network, because if you have 100 cell towers in the area, usually no one can stop them from functioning unless cable is damaged, but you have several cables. That's why what we learned is that all actors who want to interact with population should rely on channels which are well accepted, which are easy to use, and which are stable. And for us, that's cell network and internet, because we can establish an amazing warning system, which is powered by powerful cables, which is formally regulated. But what happens if it doesn't seem to be functioning? It's crucial to understand that people will find a way to communicate. Now we have Telegram channels, and it's hard to imagine, but whenever we have UAVs attacking capital, we know exact area they are approaching, and sometimes on the map you see the numbers and directions. That's a huge help because, again, we can expect that we'll have a perfect population which listen to alarms and 100% of people go to the shelter. And probably it will be happening for weeks, maybe months. But imagine that you have 3 years and half of the time is a red alarm. Do we expect people to go to the shelter each time, and do you expect anyone to come to the shelter? No, that's why for me it's critical for any actor actually to ensure flexibility and to adjust our messaging to what is happening in actual reality, not to be 50 years behind by sending SMS only. Or SMS could be fine, but usually in modern crisis it's not enough because the whole area affected is not 10 kilometers per 10 kilometers. Usually, the whole region or whole country is going to be affected if you're talking about escalation, yeah, not by natural disaster. And for me, it's crucial to highlight that preparation in terms of technology, in terms of planning scenarios, should be nationwide. You cannot have effective preparation at Visby only, and Stockholm will just stay away because everything is going to be all right. It doesn't seem to be functioning this way because shows social connection, migration, it's all interlinked, and it's essential to ensure that the whole country is prepared, and maybe even neighboring countries are included and they know what to do in a case of emergency. Technology-wise, I can have endless discussion, but I suggest keeping in mind that modern technologies are a certain risks, because if people rely on digital tools too much, it can be risky, but we don't have other choice. We can't rely on radio waves to transmit messages. For me, I suggest having a strong focus on technologies which are resilient and can be and are life-saving.
Thank you. I was thinking about your thoughts, both Nina and Laura, about the local level here. How could you, I know that the Home Guard has duty to protect and guard local installations, for example, and also the local level with the shops. How can you interact with the local community? But please, Laura first.
First of all, that is our main task is to protect and to guard. So that way it's important for us to find those installations, what is critical infrastructure. That is our main task. But as you know, the technology with all the UAVs that comes, it's not one that comes, it's hundreds of them. So you need to have a plan B. How can you still have some kind of connection? How can you communicate? And within that is also all the AI systems that they might use and send out false information. So there's a lot of things you need to be aware of. And that's why I think it's more important that you do everything locally and regionally. It will be difficult to do it in a bigger scale. And that is one of our main strengths also, because our soldiers are locally recruited, have local knowledge. So you already have that network and you have that system how to communicate without a technical solution sometimes. So I think that is a strength, but we need to actually develop it even more.
Thank you.
Right, so in Sweden, the state organization Livsmedelsverket has decided that they start in 5 different municipalities to do all the detailed work, what will happen in crisis. So we are collaborating with them. And I think the key questions there, Gotland Island is one of the municipalities. And what we do there is that we look at, so where is the reserve electricity? Is there any? Because we know that, the hospitals, the food supply, everything will, in a couple of hours, it will be a full crisis if you don't have extra electricity. You also need to have the Wi-Fi, an extra Wi-Fi network to be able to work with that. So all these questions are being now asked at the municipality level, and also kind of like prioritization is being made. So what is first priority if the electricity supply completely disappears? So is it the hospital, and then maybe the schools and so on, and when does the food store come into the picture? Because we know that in our food store, after an hour, things start really deteriorating. So we need to have an idea of where the reserve electricity is and in what priority order are we going to come. But so I think it's very good that this Livsmedelsverket have now received 50 million Swedish krona to be able to work in 5 different municipalities and make this prioritization, and also to work in practice. Which stores will be the ones that need to be protected so that there is food, and so on. So I think it's starting to happen now.
Tora, I wanted to ask you, because you've had a very specific cooperation with us concerning logistics and also training, vocational training in logistics in Ukraine. And so as we know that in Ukraine we have to start thinking about the future as well as still responding to the emergency situation. We have to start the reconstruction parallel, and I know you're supporting that in vocational training. And also I wondered if you can mention something about your transforming your construction machines.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So we are present in Ukraine through a local Ukrainian company, a retail partner called ETS. So our machines are already in place, helping to clear rubble in cities, for example. But we're also right now looking to develop a special attachment to our wheel loaders, if you know how they look, to have a mine-sweeping attachment in the front. And this is developed specifically with Ukraine in mind. And ideally, they can be operated remotely, so you don't have an operator inside. So that's a very specific example of how our engineering capacity can be used in these situations, and also add to the sort of the spirit of resistance, both here of us working and developing on it, but also, of course, being of use in Ukraine and other places.
Thank you. The first part of our panel is come to an end. So thank you very much. You will join us later again. And then we will welcome our next guests up to the stage. So welcome. I will let you introduce yourselves, and I ask you the first question at the same time. When you hear this discussion and the learnings from Ukraine, what do you think is needed in order for this multi-sector cooperation, and what can different parts of society, what can civil society do, what can the government do? Please. Yes.
I'm Felicia Ferreira. I'm the editor-in-chief of daily Christian newspaper Dagen in Sweden. And thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for facilitating this super important topic, is what I'm thinking when I'm listening. And that we are also witnessing something that I'm noticing is relationships, the importance of relationships also in these preparations for different crises, and which you have just demonstrated. Should I give a couple of reflections before I give the word to Anders as well? I was writing down 3 words. I was writing down relationships. I was writing down resilience and values. I think that's what you all are telling stories about and around, and that I think is super important. And then I was also thinking about how the multi-sector cooperation cannot be an afterthought. If I heard in between the lines, you said, Mr. Panasenko, that it, came a little bit late, and Ulrika was saying, Red Cross was not super strong in the beginning in Ukraine, but, they've been growing since. So my thoughts are, these type of corporations cannot be an afterthought. It must be built before the crisis hits. And that's why it's so important that, we keep this dialogue going. That means that the government has to invest also in relationships and coordination structures across sectors, civil society, public agencies, business, and then long before disaster strikes. And civil society plays obviously a crucial role here, not only in mobilizing volunteers, because I know you mentioned I think it was Ulrika mentioning this, how important mobilizing volunteer people is, and I think I've met you enough, Ulrika, by now to know that you would say that, faith-based communities are one of those parts of the community, and in Sweden that, easily can mobilize also volunteers. And I know they help a lot in Red Cross, for example, different things around Sweden. So not only providing this and last mile support, but also in listening to communities, identifying gaps, and advocating for those who are often left out is something I think also is I'm reflecting on as I listen. And faith-based organizations in particular are often deeply embedded in their communities. Some initial thoughts from me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Anders Lindberg. I'm a political editor-in-chief of Aftonbladet, a daily newspaper. And first of all, thank you very much, Sergej, for what you're doing and what the risks you're taking for helping people in the Russian aggression and this horrific situation that you have in Ukraine. It's very obvious for me that this is our fight as much as it's the Ukrainian fight. It's the European lessons we learn, and it's the European humanitarian responsibility we need to take as a European collective. My thoughts of this is that it's quite similar to what we say we have when we speak of total defense in Sweden. We speak very often of coordination, cooperation between civil, military, between private, public, civil society. We usually have this image of us as a very good society in organizing, and sometimes we are. But I think that we have sort of an overrated image of ourselves. I noted you said this, good enough. And the problem in crisis is that, okay, good enough is what you have, but good enough is not enough. And you need to strengthen these capabilities, and you do that by training. And sometimes you say that what you don't train on in peace won't function in war. And I think that we are in the middle of that sentence at the moment. We are not there yet. We can learn from Ukraine, we can watch Ukraine. And when I see what you're saying and what you discussed in the panel, I have a few reflections on that. You said, Sergej, that the only media that actually worked was mobile networks. I work in the media, so I'm not very happy to hear that. But I think that it's very true. And I think that we have built our system on too low resilience in information sharing. And I think one of the things we saw in Ukraine at the very start was that information, you usually said that precision is more important than strength or than mass. But you can also say that information is more important than everything else. And my children were sitting watching video clips on TikTok from the Songbird of Kiev singing the lead motive of Frozen the same day as the war started or the day after. And we had this discussion. We could discuss this. They were part of this conflict in the immediate situation. And when you said, okay, we only have the mobile networks, I think that is a key vulnerability that we have. We need to understand that our media won't function. The second thing, I think, was popular support. All of you talked about the relations. And popular support, in Swedish we say folkförankring, and this is a very clumsy word, but it means that the whole idea of the total defense, both civil, humanitarian, military, have a connection to people. And for me, civil society is the key to reach that connection. Just a fragment of young men and women will make a military service, but the most of Swedish society is part of the civil society. So I think this is the second thing I think is really, really important takeaway from Ukraine, that you can defend and you can help people for 3 years because there's total acceptance within the society. And you have that very much because of civil society. So this is, 2 reflections from me.
Thank you. So you mentioned total defense, Anders, and the idea of total defense in many people's mind, I think, is from the Cold War, or from like a past age that's in many respects very different from now. We didn't have any cell phones. We didn't have a lot of things that we have now. Do you think the concept of total defense is adjusted to the contemporary Sweden? We now have multi-identity, multi-communications society.
I think it can be, but I personally, I'm so old, so I'm part of this generation that actually made a military service and didn't question it and didn't discuss it. That was just what happened. The generations after doesn't have this experience. And when the pandemic struck, I could see very clearly who listened to the authorities, who questioned what the authorities were saying. What trust did you put in the organized structures that we have? And for me, it was a clear generational shift. My generation and older had a completely different view on whether to follow guidelines, whether to show up for service, whether to be part of a solution than younger generations. So I think that we could have a problem a little bit, a generational problem with the total defense. I think it's starting to coming back again, but it's just a few years ago. I mean, if you look at a young person today, a person that is 18 years old, that will vote in the next year's election in Sweden, we vote when we're 18. That person have, for the last 15 years, for the last 17 years, experienced a financial crisis, a refugee crisis, a pandemic, a climate crisis, a Ukraine war, a Gaza war, and now an Iran-Israeli-US war. I mean, this is 2022, the Swedish National Authority for Language, which is not actually an authority, said that the new word for the year was perma-crisis. We're living in a permanent crisis. So I think that it is possible for these people to feel, okay, there is a crisis and I will be part of the solution. But I think you need to make this connection. The perma-crisis generation need to meet the institutions, the authorities, the civil society, so that this is sort of what you don't train in peace doesn't function in war.
I mean, you're mentioning identities, and has the total defense changed as Sweden has changed? And I think there is, a bit to work on there, because there is like an untapped resource bank of people that actually, in our country today, that actually experienced different crises, wars in different parts of the world, and different disasters. And I'm thinking many immigrants and refugees in Sweden, for example, they bring with them very practical knowledge. We are inviting you here today, but we also have in our country today people with these experiences and knowledges of resilience, community response. So we need to explore that, include that, and not treat it as something on the marginal. Is something that I'm thinking. And then again, preparation, I think, is not. You mentioned a little bit what Ukraine did in the beginning, enormous efforts and volumes, but it's not. Preparation is not only volumes and practical things. I think it's also psychology, it's morals, it's spirituality, it's also existential. Definitely existential for the Ukrainian population today. So people need meaning, also hope, a sense of connection in times of uncertainty. And I know for a fact, for example, our Archbishop in Sweden has been pre-recording as a preparation speeches or preachings, or I'm not sure, but spiritual speeches that will be played in times of war on Swedish radio, for example, because in our preparations and our decision makers and also public service, they realize that's also something that is very much needed. So I think we need to broaden our perspective on how we prepare.
And Anders brought up this idea of the perma-crisis or multi-crisis. How would you say that existential or spiritual values have a place in that? Like how to embody that? Maybe I will not live my life in a completely organized and plannable environment. I will need to accept that things might change, things that I rely on might change. How can civil society and the faith-based communities be a part of that?
I mean, lead by example, obviously, but I know the faith-based communities are an example in showing, that you're not the strongest when you're alone. On the contrary to the way we sort of live in Sweden, we're super independent. We don't really need each other that much. But in times of war and crisis, I mean, your neighbor could be your lifesaver. Your neighbor could be, and we barely say hello to our neighbors in Sweden. So, I mean, we've got some work to do there, building the communities, building fellowships, and I think faith-based communities have been doing that for hundreds of years, and they know how to act fast and how to include people that maybe not everyone thinks about also. For example, the lonely, the elderly, or that type of groups. Super important.
Yeah, we actually at the Swedish Red Cross we do an annual survey with the population about crisis preparedness and home preparedness. How much you have thought about this, and we added a question to this survey last year. Would you be able? Do you feel like you will be able to ask your neighbor for help if you would need? So.
And what did they answer?
Keep tracking that. I don't have the number, but. It's less than 50, yeah. But we will keep tracking that because that's actually a very important part of resilience. So, yes, Anders, did you have any comments on Felicia's, this experience that we have in Sweden that we may not always see or make use of, people that have actually experienced crisis and conflict?
No, but I think it's very important, and I think it's also more than identity, because we usually say we haven't been to war for 200 years, and the we doesn't obviously include kind of a fifth of the population which has come here from other countries, which definitely have been in wars, basically all of them. So this we need to be expanded. It needs to be expanded with the experiences of the people that actually have. Very many recently, many from Ukraine, many from the Middle East that are coming here. And those experiences, those voices need to be part of a total defense identity. I mean, and I think that this is, I'm not sort of sure of how to always do this, but I think that one of the keys, and I think we saw this a little bit in the pandemic, that was the function of these civil society organizations on the ground. In my neighborhood, the Scouts, which I'm a member of, the Red Cross also, the Swedish Church of Sweden and so on, organized these local Facebook groups that actually start helping people. And this kind of self-organization that started to include a number of people that normally wouldn't talk to each other could do it because they were organized, because they had prepared. They didn't know how to do all the things that we in the Scout movement, for example, knows because that's what we do. But what you could do was you connect the dots through the institutions. So one of the things that I think is an experience from Ukraine and very important experience here is to defend the institutions, defend the local groups, defend the local civil society. And if you have those organizations on the ground, you can do all these things, because then you can get people to meet. I think that we haven't been so good at that lately as we were historically. Historically, every Swede was a member of like 3 organizations or 4 or 5. I don't know. The statistics is probably made up. I don't know. But today, when you have computer games and you have TikTok and you have the loneliness that also comes with the digital world, we are not very good at sort of countering that, and we're not good at discussing it, which I think is a problem. And there comes Felicia's, the spiritual part also, that this is something you discuss the meaning of what you do, which I think is a core value.
Thank you. So now we will invite all of our speakers up on stage. And I would like you to, if you have a brief comment now on the last comment on what you've heard and what you've listened to. And then also in Sweden we have the government urges us to pack our crisis kits, krislådor. We have to keep them. We have to keep food for 7 days at our homes, they say. And the final question for you is, what would you put in your crisis kit, or what would you advise the audience to put in their questions. Okay.
So, Sari.
Yep. I will start with my final comment about this whole discussion. So for me, it's crucial to realize that whenever crisis strikes, we are not going to have enough people from NGOs, we are not going to have enough people from municipalities, and it is extremely important to trust own community, because people will naturally come together. Natural leaders will emerge. And for me, the role of Red Cross, other civil society organizations, of municipalities, is to trust those people and utilize the energy to bring benefits for their smaller communities. It can be one district or even one multi-apartment building. So trust is crucial here, and as I just thinking about it and getting ready to put certain responsibility onto people, provide certain support, and use them as allies and as supporters. And that's it. Talking about emergency kit, of course we have some obvious items like food, water, that's clear. We can easily Google it. For me, it's crucial to have power backups, like power bands, and any connectivity devices you can potentially get. If you have a Starlink, definitely, even if you don't need it here and now, it's better to put it in your trunk, because anyway, connectivity is going to be crucial, and it refers to information is aid concept, because usually if you know what's happening, you have a much higher chances to survive, and people around you as well. Thank you.
Ulrika.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to comment briefly on what has been mentioned by you so many times, and what we also do, for instance, with ICA locally, where it's really about trust building, but where we also during 1 week in October, we made it actually happening in about 100 local cities in Sweden last year, have a way to come together and really show how that network works, and we do it in the ICA stores. But I think, I mean, and you've already said, I think I would bring the same, and definitely connectivity. But I think one thing we have not mentioned, and it relates also to the question about values, is international humanitarian law. So I actually wanted also to mention that we have a key responsibility as the Red Cross movement to make sure that this is understood. Because in the world we live in today, if we don't have a principled support to humanitarian aid wherever we work, and if we don't argue for fulfillment of the responsibilities with regards to international humanitarian law, while not being respected, we know that, but that's the main reason why we have to argue, we will see a world in full chaos. So I think for us it's really also important, and we made also a survey not too long ago, some weeks ago, was asking Swedes, what do you know about international humanitarian law, and why is it important? And I mean, for the tragic reasons that we know, actually the knowledge is quite high in Sweden. We need also to argue for the values, but also for the principles of humanitarian support, neutral, impartial, and so on, and really reach those who need it the most, but also that we need a principled approach also from the international community and from states and governments.
Yeah. So unfortunately, construction equipment doesn't really fit in the crisis box. So I would also opt for the solar charger and the power banks, and I know for sure that's what my kids would bring as well.
Thank you.
Right, I think, generally it has been super interesting discussion, and I started reflecting about everybody being so individually focused in Sweden. I think there's a lot of engagement, because what we meet 12 million Swedes every week in our ICA stores and also in the pharmacies, and every time we do a lot of activity, for instance together with the Red Cross or with some other organization, there's a lot of engagement of all the consumers and all the Swedish people out there. So I think there is hope, and there are a lot of trusted organizations that the Swedes trust. A lot of big companies, but also Red Cross and military, the police, the tax authorities, and so on. So I think we can all create this kind of engagement together, and when we show that we can collaborate like activities together, we get the engagement of all the Swedish consumers. So there's a lot we can do, and I think that is the most important thing now, that we continue supporting Ukraine, but we also continue working locally so that we know who we're going to be collaborating with, and we establish these relationships already now. And finally, what do I put in my emergency kit? I of course have already a kit for like minimum 7 days of food at the country house. I'm not sure how we're gonna get there because it's quite far away from Stockholm. It's like 800 kilometers north, but somehow we'll get there. But also I'm a sailor and we've been sailing a lot on the North Sea and so on. And it's good to have a satellite phone when everything breaks down, all the other communication. So that might be also a good idea.
Thank you. Felicia.
Yes, besides, I'm on the crisis box then already here. Besides the obvious things, food, water, batteries, and so on, I would probably bring a Bible. Not only because it matters to me personally, but as I mentioned before, in times of crisis, in times of war, we need hope, we need meaningful things, and I know the Bible actually has a lot of resilience, existential resilience, and relationship advice, if not anything else. I would bring a Bible.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, but if I start in the other end, I would just like to agree with what Ulrika was saying about the international law. I think that is a problem that we have at the moment when international law is breaking down everywhere. We see it in the Middle East, we've seen it in Ukraine with the Russian aggression, and we see it in other parts of the world, because this is a kind of domino where one brick starts to fall and this just continue falling. And you sometimes say that you can make a fish soup out of an aquarium. That is kind of easy, but it's quite hard to make an aquarium of a fish soup. And we are ending into a situation today where we're going more and more into all the fibers of the international law breaks up, and countries are starting to just step back from conventions. The convention is not applied. We see every day on TV that international law is really threatened. So defend the law. It sounds kind of stupid, but it's actually there. We are there now. In my box, I will have all the things stated in the government's pamphlet, because I'm a person that follows government pamphlets. I will also have my mobile internet system, so I can update the news that all of you can read, because that's my role in this total defense.
Thank you. I would just like to comment the last thing you said, Anders. I'm more positive and optimistic, and have to say that after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, we had 30,000 that applied for the Home Guard, and normally there are like 2,000. And we also have the 18 military defense organizations. They consist of 350,000 Swedish citizens. Right. And I also would like to mention that in the Home Guard we have a lot of soldiers with immigrant background, and that they want to show their gratitude towards Sweden that we once took them in, and they're more than welcome. So I don't have that you were not negative, but I don't have that. I have a more positive view on that, and that is good. And if we go to the crisis box, you have all mentioned things, but that's one thing you can't put in a box, but you will always carry it with you if you want to, and that is your mindset. Because if you don't have the right mindset, it doesn't matter what you have in your box. So I think that is one of the key things that you have to bring with you. And I think it's all of our duty from the church, from the government, from the different ways, to give that hope to our citizens. So that is the mindset. You can't put it in a box. And look at Ukraine. You didn't have that in a box, but you still have it. And that's called resilience. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that note, we will end this seminar.
Very good note.
Very good note. And to thank our speakers, we have a small crisis kit here for adjusted for ALMEDALEN needs. So it's an energy drink, a power bar, and a rain poncho. So